Hello. My name is Julie Debris and I first met Michael Welker in 1962 at Riverview Gardens High School. I was taking my study hall class in the library where one day I wanted to do something funny and maybe play a prank on someone. So I wrote a note on a piece of pink-colored paper making it stick out of a book where someone would see it. Then I placed the book back on the shelf where it would be noticed. I wrote on the paper that I wanted to find a friend at school and then signed my name. 2 hours later Michael Welker, who took his study hall hour class in the same library, found my note and we began corresponding to each other through this book. We only told each other our first names, so he only knew my name was Julie. Well, 4 days after and writing each other I switched classes and was unable to go back to the library and write Michael telling him what had happened. Well, Michael began a crusade in searching for every girl in Riverview Gardens whose first name was Julie. He was asking every girl he could find if she were Julie and if she was the one who had been writing to him. He never was able to find me until a month later when we met by accident when I was selling tickets to a charity benefit dance at a local grade school. Well, Michael didn't have enough money to buy a ticket and I began to tease him, calling him a poor little boy with no money. Well, on that Saturday Michael got enough money to buy a ticket at the door and he attended. We talked a little while I continued to tease him. He asked me what time it was and I asked him if he had to be home before midnight when his coach turned back into a pumpkin. He said no, but he was worried his parent might be worried about him being out so late. He asked me again if I knew the time and I said I think it's time you asked me to dance. So he asked me and we danced. The music was so loud it was difficult to hear him. He asked me not to be so hard on him and I saw an opportunity to tease him again. I pretended not to hear his words and I screamed back at him over the sound of the music and said, "Why are you telling me you have a hard on? Is it because of me? Are we dancing to close? I am doing that to you." "Oh no," he said, feeling embarrassed, and then I'm laughing to myself as he trying to explain his words. But it was too late. Everyone around us had stopped and was listening to our conversation. We danced one more dance and he asked me my name. I said it was Cookie and he says, "Your name is Cookie, like a sweet cookie just out of the oven, sweet and warm." I know he was doing his best trying to make conversation, but I gently slapped his face and said, "You're not going to get that close to find out." We danced again and then went side and waited for my mother and I told him my real name was Julie Debris. Oh my gosh, wow, was he shocked, and he asked me if I was the girl writing to him in the library a month before and I said yes. Now teasing him again, I told him he broke my heart when he stopped writing. He claimed I broke his heart first when I left him in the library. While we wait in the parking lot waiting for my mom, there was a car that had the radio on and so we danced to the Pointer Sisters song, "I Love How You Love Me." We were slow dancing when my mother pulled up beside us and she called my name. I didn't want to stop, it was so romantic. I asked Mom if she could take poor little boy home since he didn't have a car or bicycle and he would have to walk the 3 miles to his house, and he told me he was worried the bad wolf might just get him. I said, "Mom, he only lives a few blocks away from our house." When we reached his house, Michael got out of the car and he said thank you to my mother and said goodbye to her and then to me, and my mom asked if I had been teasing him all night. Michael looked at me and then back at Mom and said, "Well, she has been pretty hard on me most of the night." I couldn't believe he said that and I gave him a mean look and acted like I was going to punch him, and then I laughed. This was the start of a beautiful relationship, but almost always on the phone. One time I invited him to come to my house and we would walk together down the street to the Dairy Maid's ice cream shop on Halls Ferry Road and I would buy him an ice cream cone because I had money. We did that and he insisted that he would pay for the ice cream and he would not allow me to pay. I tried to give him $1 but he refused to take it. After we finished the ice cream we began to walk back to my house where I was going to show Michael how I played the piano. I wanted to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini to show him how good I was playing the piano. As we were walking across the street I told Michael I needed to use the bathroom and there was one at the Mars gas station on that side of the street. Well, the female bathroom was locked up so I went into the male side instead. I noticed on the wall there was a machine where for 25 cents I could buy a prophylactic, and so I bought one. On our long walk back home I snuck the prophylactic and a dollar bill in the front pocket of his shirt, and he never noticed. I want to play a joke on him once we were in my house and see his reaction. Then my mother came home and said hello to Michael, and she talked to him for a while and then said he had some money sticking out of the front of his shirt and he was going to lose it. So she reached up and pulled the money out so he could put it in his wallet, and when she did, the prophylactic came out and fell on the floor. My mother was shocked and looked at me and then at Michael, and I was laughing inside while he tried to explain to my mother that he never saw it before, he didn't know how it got there, and he never bought it. Well, she made him go home, and then Mom gave me a long talk about boys and boys and boys and the birds and bees. Michael called me later and asked what happened after he left, and I told my mom gave me a lecture about sex. Michael asked if my mom had told my dad, and I said yes, and that my dad said the next time he saw Michael he was going to kill him, so be prepared to die. After a minute I laughed and then told him I told my mom the truth, that I bought it to get his reaction when I found it in his pocket. Michael did not think it was that funny, while I sure did. A few weeks later, during the wintertime when we had a lot of snow on the ground, Michael learned I was in the hospital, so he walked almost 15 miles one way to St. John's Hospital in St. Louis to see me. He told the receptionist downstairs that he was my brother, otherwise they would not allow him to come upstairs. He knocked on my door and asked if he could come in, and I was shocked to hear his voice. In my teasing voice, I said no, he could not come in because I was totally naked and laying on the bed and we weren't married. After my laugh, I told him to come on in, and he told me he was worried about me. We talked a little while and he walked over to the window and said, "Look, it's snowing outside." I looked and it was beautiful, and there was a blue bird on the outside window sill, and it made it so romantic. Michael turned toward me and said if a boy kisses a girl and she kisses him back on the first snowfall of the year, then they will fall in love forever. I know he just wanted a kiss for walking all that way over to the hospital, but I wanted a kiss too. Then my mom opened the door and entered the room at that very moment when we were going to kiss. I told Mom that Michael had walked all that way from his home over to the hospital just to see me. Then I told my mom what Michael had said about a kiss on the first snowfall and the blue bird on the windowsill, and I asked my mom if it was okay if Michael kissed me. It would be my first kiss. My mom didn't say anything, she just turned and looked away and started to cry. It was then that Michael and I had our first kiss. We were both only 15 years old, and he was my first love. A few days later we moved to Arizona, and I wrote Michael a letter and gave him my address, and Michael wrote back. A week later my mother wrote a letter to Michael and said she was sorry to tell him, but I had died in my sleep last night and I had just written my last letter to him that was enclosed. She went on to say that I love him and she knew that he loved me too. Michael, this is our song, I Love How You Loved Me.